going on. But right now, in D.C., it's the NABE Policy Conference. That is the National Association for Business Economics. And Yahoo Finance's Brian Cheung joins us now with Virginia Senator Mark Warner. Hi, guys. Brian?
Hi there, Dan. Yeah, so again, here at the National Association of Business Economics, I'm standing with Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, who just spoke about the geopolitical risks to the United States. Senator, thank you so much for joining me. I want to ask you just first off, we did hear this morning that GDP for the fourth quarter came in at an annualized rate of 2.6%. What are the biggest risks that you see facing the U.S. economy in 2019?
Well, I think the risks include the fact that as our debt spending goes up, if our deficit goes up to $1 trillion this coming year, we've been basically living on borrowed money for a long time. So far, that's worked out. My fear is if we see increasing interest rates, just 100 basis points increase in interest rates would mean $180 billion roughly in additional debt payments. I think that is a challenge and a drag, particularly on the ability of the government to meet its obligations. I also think that I am greatly concerned about the challenges around China, particularly in the technology space. We spend $700 billion plus on defense. China spends about $250. The differential, China is investing in next generation artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 5G wireless technology. And my fear is that our traditional technological advantages in next generation technology is rapidly eroding. So those are some of the concerns I have going forward.
So on that point on technology, we actually heard USTR Robert Lighthizer speak yesterday. He said that there's a lot of work to be done, especially on intellectual property protection for U.S. companies. Huawei ZTE is obviously in view, and you have a lot of experience with telecom. I mean, you've spoken about this in the past, but do you think the Trump administration is taking the right stance with regards to that, and how does that kind of fold into the overall narrative of the U.S.-China trade deal still in the works?
Well, the concern I have is this, I think there was an emerging consensus as Mr. Trump came into office that China was operating on a different set of rules, that their companies had been infiltrated greatly by the Communist Party, particularly in the technology space. There was massive amounts of data sharing going on. And I think there could have been a chance for this president to build a worldwide coalition. China's a great nation, but to say to China, you got to play by the same set of rules everyone else does. You've got to cut out your intellectual property theft. You can't continue to have foreign-based companies that go into China have to give up their intellectual property to work in China. Instead, the president spent most of his political capital attacking countries like Canada and our European allies. And my fear is, well, I think we do need to hold China accountable. This is so much bigger than questions around aluminum, steel, and soybeans. It really ought to be around next generation technology. And my fear is, when the administration got tough on the company like ZTE, once they got the first pushback from China, they buckled. And my fear is that they'll buckle on particularly around the technology transfer issues.
And now last question, because this is captivating D.C. at the moment. So Michael Cohen testifying in the House yesterday. You had the briefing behind closed doors on Tuesday. Was there anything that you heard yesterday that was made public that differed from what you heard in that closed door meeting? And is there anything that changes the game in terms of the investigations that you've pursued over the past 2 years?
Well, it's interesting that we've almost become immune to Mr. Trump's constant attacks against these investigations. But, just what Mr. Cohen said, that Trump was aware of the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians before it took place, that Donald Trump was in active negotiations about a Trump Tower Moscow well into throughout the whole primary season. I think if I'd been a Republican voter, I would have wanted to know that my potential presidential candidate was trying to do business with Vladimir Putin, was going to offer him a free $50 million for free penthouse. That seems to be, I believe that's inappropriate. And I think generally speaking, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but the number of contacts made between Russians and either the Trump campaign or the Trump business organization, frankly, it's unprecedented.
So would you call that a smoking gun, though?
I would say this. The level, I've said from the outset that I'm not going to draw any final conclusions until we finish our investigation. But nothing I heard from Michael Cohen dissuaded me from my view that this may be the most important thing I ever take on in public life.
Okay. Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, thanks so much. We'll send it back to you in New York.